Right, so some of you might have been to the previous version of this, which was the Witch Elf and the Witch Hunter that we did. I think that when we did that one, we came up to some reasonable conclusion between the two. The video and the write-up is on the website, Patreon, and on YouTube, if anybody missed it and you guys want to see it. So let's go and see what's the story between the Engineer and the Magus on a basic level. Because a lot of people say the Engineer is OP, Order says Magus is OP, people don't know what's going on exactly. We'll try and put some numbers in there. This is a little bit longer than the Witch Elf Witch Hunter one. It's better. I know, but some people argue, so we'll try and sort that one out. So let's start as we did with the Witch Elf and the Witch Hunter. Let's start with the stats here. There are a couple of things which are a bit weird again on the stats. They make no sense why they should have that. So on the stats, the Engineer gets more strength than the Magus. Reason unknown. However, this is irrelevant. None of the classes. You never learn to drive a car. So strength is irrelevant here. So I gave no points to either of them. They don't use it. Then when we go down to Ballistics, where the Engineer is actually using that, if I can make it bigger, no, I cannot make it bigger. But you can make your screen full screen and you should be able to see it properly. Yep, if you make it full screen, it's working. Unless I can, you mean make it like this bigger? I suppose that can happen. I can do that. So, is that better? Yeah? Okay, cool. Right, so Ballistics, the Engineer gets 221 over 74. So that's the main damage one. So we gave him a point. It's natural. Then we go to Intelligence. Engineer gets the same as the Magus gets on the Ballistics. They go across here. And Intelligence on the Magus is 221. So Magus gets a point. Neutrinos, what's up, dude? No, we're just showing what each class has. We're not saying one is stronger or the other. We're just analyzing, so maybe people get a better idea between the classes, and maybe some people start playing more Magus and Dastro, and you guys get more AoE pressure for, you know, forts and stuff. So on the toughness part, Engineer gets more toughness, Magus gets a little bit less. This is another weird one. I have no idea. Oh, these are the actual stats. These are the actual stats of the game. So I don't understand why the Magus gets more weapon skill than the Engineer when he has no physical. Oh, these are the stats that this character start with. This is no gear, nothing. These are the default. That's why they start like this. I don't know why they start like this, but that's how they start. This is the thingy. Yeah, mainly it could be for the melee attack, but still. A class that has mainly physical damage on the range and the melee shouldn't has a little bit more, but okay, fair enough. What's the DPS on the weapons? We'll see. Neutrinos don't rush. We'll see everything. We'll start with the stats. This is with naked characters, all right? Just wait. You'll see. We'll go down. We have 7 tabs to go through with skills and other things. Don't worry. So initiative, they have the same. That means that they both start with the same amount of chance. They are both level 40, no gear, no tactics, no gear, no tactics, no renown, no weapons, nothing. These are the numbers the characters get naked at level 40. All right. So they have the same chance to receive critical. Oops, the same chance to receive. Oh, sorry. The same chance to receive critical. There, both of them. The Magus gets more willpower. Okay, I know that Rasen said that, but I think it is important that he does get more willpower. Wound Engineer gets a little bit more over the Magus. Okay, so overall the stats I know about. They have the same amount of damage. 221 ballistic, 221 that, and I would say a little bit more wounds here. He gets a little bit more disrupt there, and that's it. Why not? No, we're doing the, we did Witch Elf and Witch Hunter as well, Neutrinos. So we do all the classes like this. As soon as I level them up, we'll be doing this. So we got a little bit more in. So overall, they excel at 3 points, and the other side at 3 different points. So point-wise, they have their advantages. That's the whole point of doing this. They're pretty much even, but different on different things. Now, when we go down here a little bit to the defensive stuff, the Magus has a higher parry because of the weapon skill. They have the same amount of dodge, and the Magus also has higher disrupt over because he has more willpower. So defensively wise, the Magus theoretically, even for that 0.6, can deal better against melee, and he can do better against range spellcasting. On the dodge is the same. So the Magus does get a little bit more of an advantage on the defensive stats as well. No, I don't. I can check, but I don't know exactly how many there are now. I can check though. Since you mentioned how many people are playing, right now on tier 4 we have 15 engineers and 15 Maguses at level 15 at tier 4. And when it comes to the damage bonus, they have exactly the same. So on the stats, they are the same. A little bit more defense on the Magus, same damage. What do you mean versus 15 engineers and 15 Maguses online, level 40 in the game right now? Alright, so let's start and see how they deal with the damage a little bit. Dude, seriously, you want to do that now? 21 Bright Wizards, 22 Sorcerers, so Destro has more, 22 Squiggies, 22 Witch Shadow Warriors. What else you want to know? Destro has more because you have more population. Anyways. So, and I think we need to make this a little bit less. There we go. So here we have a comparison between the Magus and the Engineer. How they deal when they attack the dummy, that is naked, no weapons, no armor, no tactics, no specialty, no masteries. This is hand-to-hand combat on the dummies. I'll put the photographs on so you see what's going on. But I'm just going to go down here to the numbers. So we'll see that I've done 10 attacks in each of these photographs. Okay, so we attacked 10 times the dummy, another 10, another 10 to get some numbers here. So the DPS between the Magus, or the Engineer, and the Magus is pretty much the same. It's 0.55. The numbers are small because this is, you know, unarmed combat. However, the Engineer seems to be dealing a little bit more damage over the Magus, very little. And the reason for that is random. It's random because the Magus on the last set that I did, he got 0 crits, the Engineer got 3. So that increases his damage. It didn't affect his DPS, but it did increase a little bit the damage. Because on the first 2 sets, Magus got 3 here on the top right, and 1, the Engineer got 1 and 3. So these are even. So the only difference was on the 3rd set. Between DPS and damage, DPS is how much damage you can do in a second, okay? And damage, that's the DPS, you do a second. And then the damage is how much you dealt overall in that same amount of time. What is the difference? The difference is this. You can deal, let's say, 1,000 damage a second, right? Or you, so every shot you do in 10 seconds will be 100. But you can hit somebody, instead of doing 100, 100, 100, 100, you can do 200, 300, and in a bigger amount. In the 10 seconds, you can do 3 shots, 333, 333, and 333 to do 1,000 damage, but your DPS will be a lot lower. You know what I mean? The DPS determines the burst, damage determines the total amount of damage you can deal. They're not always the same, but they do have a correlation between them. In order to kill something, Lilaria, easier, you need to have high DPS. That determines your burst, because you apply more pressure because you go damage, 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 damage. You don't allow the healer to stop, breathe, or if he runs out of AP. If you do big damage, let's say you do 1,000 damage and then you do another 1,000 after 3 seconds, the healer has time to cast a big heal and counter your damage. But if you keep doing 300 every second, boom, 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 he will heal, but in the 2 seconds you'll do, let's say 600, he will heal 500. So the DPS allows you to apply pressure. That is the difference there. Now, in some cases you want DPS, in some other cases you might want to do more damage. The dummies neutrinos have no resist, no armor, nothing. It's pure damage. Yeah, we're talking about the construct. We'll go into that as well. But right now we're doing dummies. And I'll tell you why we do dummies. The reason why we start with the dummies is because we can see the pure numbers. And then we can realize later on, I have everything in order, you will see it, how those numbers change. Okay? So this is dummies that have no armor, no resist, nothing. And this is unarmed combat, just fists. Okay? No masteries, nothing. So the DPS is the same, but the total damage is a little bit higher on the engineer because he just crit it a little bit more. Crit in Return of Reckoning means between plus 35 and 45% more damage on that attack. And they have the same amount of chance to crit. It just happened that he did. Fist of Fury, yes, something like that. So the next test I did, so far they look pretty similar, very small difference there. The next one that we did, and don't jump because you're gonna see some incredible numbers on the next one, okay? I'll explain, don't jump. The next one we did was to compare the melee attack of the Magus to the melee attacks and ranged attacks of the Engineer. So on the Magus, first we'll do the Magus with a 200 versus the Engineer with a melee. That is just the spanner, okay? So on this case, as you can see, DPS for the Engineer is high, while DPS for the Magus is low. However, the damage is about 20% difference. The Magus with the stuff is doing a lot more damage, of course, because it's 200, okay? Up close on melee range, and also the total damage is significantly bigger. I mean, in 30 attacks total, the Engineer did 1.8k and the Magus did 3,289. Again, no masteries, no tactics, no renown, no gear. It's just a 200 stuff versus a spanner. Okay? So if the Magus comes close, he will deal on the auto attack a lot more damage than the Engineer will do. Now, the Magus does not have a ranged auto attack, as you know. He only has melee auto attack. And even if we go down on the ranged one, the Engineer, if I shrink this a bit so I can see the numbers myself. Hold on a second. Because I planned it so I can see the numbers myself, but then you wanted it bigger. So even on the ranged one, his DPS stays the same, his damage stays the same on the Engineer. His total damage on the gun goes up by a little bit. Well, the Magus can play close as the Engineer does, even better. It's just people don't play it. Even if you add those two, you know, because you can add this, the Engineer, if he goes close, he uses his wrench. If he goes further than 5 feet, he switches to the gun. So either way, whether it's close or far away, the Engineer doesn't match the damage of the Magus. The only difference is the Magus doesn't have a range one. The Magus gets another advantage because he doesn't have the auto attack. I mean, my Magus runs 800 toughness. I mean, you can go close, you know, you can go close, not a problem. So on the melee, the Magus wins hands down because he has a 200 over the Engineer. The only difference is that he doesn't have a ranged one. So that is an advantage on the Engineer, that he does have a ranged auto attack. And if I just go back, we'll see this on the next one actually. But he does hurt a lot more close, so he compensates for that if you get close to him. But many people don't run defensive builds on the Magus. They all want to be glass cannons. Now, whether that's good or bad, I don't know. I usually play defensive myself. I like to go up close, you know, fuck up some witch hunters and things like that. It is possible. The problem is, it is such a grind to mix and match 3 and 4 sets, and especially 2 sets from PvE, and you know, it's a grind to do it on the Magus. Engineer has easier builds. So the next test we went when I did was again naked, no, you know, no gear, no renown, no masteries, to compare on the dummies again. Gamblast versus Red Fire. It's the main attack for the ranged ones. We're gonna start, I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger again. We're gonna start on the right hand side with the Magus here. And this is the Magus versus the Engineer with a gun. No spanner, the gun versus the Magus with the 200 stuff. And this is where you're gonna see the incredible numbers I talked about, and you're gonna go insane and start screaming. But please don't, because on the next tab that we're gonna see in a minute, you will see why you shouldn't scream. Okay, so shooting the dummy with Red Fire on the Magus, he outputted a total damage of the dummies on 30 attacks, 4,166. I'm assuming that's big enough for you guys to read. With damage average of 160 and a DPS of 0.38. The Engineer, on the other hand, with using only a gun, not the spanner, right? He had a much higher DPS, all the way to 0.74, with an average damage of nearly 300 and a total damage of almost 8,000. He did double the damage that the Magus outputted on the dummy. It's hands down really powerful. Also, don't forget that the Engineer on the attacks gets the auto attack damage in there as well, which is approximately 2,000 to 3,000 damage on every set that I did. So it is bigger. And if we add on the Engineer the gun and the spanner, right, and we do exactly the same thing, Gamblast, his damage goes off the roof all the way up to 9,000. It's really not, you will see that he's not that much of a burst. You'll see why. But on the dummy with gun and spanner, by the way, this does not use turrets, so there's no turret buffs or anything like that. So on the dummy, he almost does 9,000 damage. It's over 100%, more than double what the Magus does using just Gamblast on the dummy. I'm repeating the word dummy because there's no armor, there's no resists, there's nothing there. And if we just had these numbers, everybody will scream, nerf the Engineer. You know, I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. It's almost doing more than 100% the damage the Magus can output on a dummy. To be honest, when I've seen this, I was like, no, I've done something wrong here. You know, this cannot be. But it is. I double checked, and yes, the Engineer on the dummy kicks the living shit out of the dummy compared to the Magus. So I thought that since they have no resist and all that, there has to be a reason why no armor and all this, that this doesn't look right. If that was true in the game, then the Engineer would pretty much destroy everything instantly. So I went and did exactly the same thing. No gear, no renown, no masteries, no talismans, nothing, no turrets. On the construct, the construct is the target that has armor, sovereign, and resistances. It's more of a mini boss. So if we go and see that one, it's same thing, 10 attacks on each one and all that kind of thing. On the Engineer, you might notice it says 19 attacks and 20 because it does the auto attack as well. And nothing I can do about that. So that is the same as this. So when we go to the construct that has armor and it has resistances, this is where things change. And they change dramatically. On this one, the Engineer is still burstier. It has a much higher DPS. It's 0.85 over 0.44. It has double the DPS, but it has 25% less damage. And look at the total damage: 1.5k on the Engineer and 1.8k on the Magus. Between the dummy and the construct, the Engineer lost 495% of his damage. And the Magus only lost 127, making the Magus hitting a sovereign target with armored potion and all that, and resist much more than the Engineer. 1,500 damage on the Engineer, 1.8k on the Magus. Huge difference. They both lose, but the Engineer lost 195% of his damage when it comes to armor. It's a big number. Of course, you guys are gonna say, yeah, but you get a little bit of ignore, you have armor debuff and all that. We'll see all this later as well. But the physical damage is really hard to overcome. It's a big problem, and that would be my game kicking me out. So from no resist to that, 495% damage reduction, over 127 on the Magus. Because this is physical damage over spell damage, you know, on the construct, which is a hard target to hit, I thought to go and try and do Firebomb versus Rend Winds, because that is like the Grenadier main attack, and that is the equivalent on the Magus is the Red Wind. So I went and did that, and still the Magus wins, and he wins a lot, because the Engineer gets on the same amount of attacks on the construct. That is on the construct. That is the sovereign target with the armor buffs and all that. 0.66 DPS over 1.58. The DPS, the burstiness of that ability on the Magus, because it hits 3 times the second, it gives him a much higher DPS, much higher. His total damage though is a little bit lower than the Engineer in this case, that throws 1 every other second. So the Engineer hits harder but doesn't have the DPS to apply the pressure, and the total damage between the two on the same amount of attacks, the Engineer can sort by about 100 and something damage total. So the Magus again, I think he wins that. For me, DPS is more important. So he wins the DPS and the total damage, so he outputs a lot more damage in a short amount of time using just that one skill. And as you know, you may know or may not know that the Magus also has 1 extra dot than the Engineer. And you know, sometimes on the stream that I say how I have this sense that the Magus applies the dots a lot faster than the Engineer. Some of you might have heard me say this sometimes, that by the time I do 1 or 2 dots, the Magus has more on me. I figure out what the problem is, and it's a 2-factor problem, that one. First is that the Magus can cast more dots than the Engineer can. Yeah, but I figured out why. It's the animation is number 1. The animation of the Magus are faster, therefore you feel that, okay? And the second is the fact that the Magus can cast 7 dots in the 250 AP they have. They cast 7 dots before they run out. The Engineer casts 6. So they can apply more dots with 250 AP, while the Engineer can apply 6. So I've written them down. All right, I was trying to find what the thing is. Yeah, they have 1 dot more. We have 8. They have 7. They have 8. But this is the thing. Red Fire, which is the main ability of Gunblast, so you know what I'm talking about, it costs 40 AP on the Engineer, but it costs only 35 on the Magus. So the Magus can keep doing it. You know, in the 10 shots, he'll get an extra 1. So he can keep the pressure up. The other one is Flashbang Grenade. Signal Flare. This is on the Sniper tree, right? It's 40 AP for the Engineer. It is 25 for the Magus. So they can, if you put all the dots in line, they get, this is a huge difference from 40 to 25. They apply, and also the Magus one, does 1240 for 25 AP. The Signal Flare does 125 for 40. So I've also written down the damage. Violent Fire does 241 over 216. Elemental to physical. Right, the Engineer has physical dots on the Sniper, which are affected by armor, if I'm not mistaken. So that's also another problem there. So out of 11 skills that they could possibly do, the Engineer will require 260 AP to cast them, the Magus 240. So at 235, the Engineer will cast 6 skills, dealing 3,236 damage total, if you add these numbers. And at 240, the Magus will cast 7 skills, dealing 3,682. So they will deal 400 damage more because of the extra dot before they run out of AP. The Engineer runs out of AP at 6 skills, the Magus at 7. So they can apply an extra dot because of the AP reduction they have. It's cheaper for them. And that gives them more DPS, that gives more total damage, that gives them more sustain. You can check this thing about 11 here, so you know what this is. This is the cast time. All right, so this here that we're talking 40 AP to 25, they still have the same cast time. So it's 11 seconds to cast all of them if you do. I will just write in some numbers for myself. But the engineer, before rounds of AP, 6 skills, 6 dots, the Magus will apply 7. Plus the animation and that extra dot there, it feels like he applies the dots a lot faster. So I found out why that happens. I don't know why the same skills that have such a big difference, especially this one, 40 AP to 25. Physical damage to elemental. That, I don't know. So, in my opinion, the Magus also has an advantage on the AP front there, and the fact that it has an extra dot, and that he can cast one before he runs out. So that's a plus on the Magus. We'll see all this summarized at the end, but it's a problem. And also, don't forget, the Engineer has corporeal damage and physical. The Magus has elemental and spirit. Both much more hard-hitting than that. The next thing we have to look in, and it is one of the things most people say, but the pet of the Engineer burst and you know, all the pet thingy. Let's go have a look at the pets between the two classes now, shall we? So we'll take them one at a time, please, because this can get confusing, okay? So the first pet we're going to look at is the close range pet, the flame turret for the Engineer and the blue horror for the Magus. Both take the same amount of time to cast and both cost 55 action points. They both have the same teleport mechanism. If you're running, you know, you can recall it to you. Now, the Steam Vent, which is the AoE one, will deal on the Engineer 74 damage every second, 30 feet around it, corporeal damage. It's red because it loses over the blue horror of the Magus, which it does 116 damage every second, 30 feet around the turret, elemental damage. It loses because 116 damage over 74. So on the close range, the Magus gets an advantage on this. They all get the same stacks, 40% damage, you know, these are applied. The other ability of the flamethrower is an AoE ability in a cone in front of it. It will deal 174 damage, 40 feet. The CD, I think so. I haven't checked, to be honest. That might be something I missed. We'll have to log in. Let me log in and have a look. So we'll answer this. Because that's something I might have missed. See, that's why we do this live here together, to see if we have the same thing or not. So bear with me, I'm logging in to... Oh, I will be locked. No, I'm not. Am I going to be locked if I go to order after this? Anyways, let me log in the Magus and check first, because I'm on Destro side. Do we have an Engineer that can check for us, so I don't risk getting locked? So we'll double check this. Let me see what the CD is in this. Yeah, I'll try. I'm not locked, I'll try. I mean, I did PvP on Destro. My Engineer is on the dummies, so... Hold on a second, let me check. So, we're doing blue horror, right? Sorry, the flame one. Where's the flame one? Yeah. Blue horror, let's see. First one, so I'll write it up. Let me make this bigger for you as well. There we go. So I'll try and put it here. So the blue horror has a cooldown on energy one, control energy, 8 seconds. So let's just put it there, 8 seconds cooldown. And his second ability has a cooldown of 5 seconds. So put it here, 5 seconds. All right, let me log out and go to... Ah, good point, good point, good point, good point. Does it have the pet abilities? The RR builder, I don't think it has the pet abilities. Now, it has the pets themselves, but it doesn't, I don't think it has the... It doesn't have the pet abilities. Hey, Frankie! Hi Frankie, welcome. Right, let me log into Fixer now and check it out. That is something that I missed. So we might change this outcome here. So let's do this right. This will take a minute. I'm sorry, I'm not perfect. And it's a good thing that Thane spotted it. So let me get in Fixer quickly. You know what I've done wrong? Actually, I just did stupid. I should have checked all the turrets on the Magus, then went to Fixer instead of going back and forth. Anyways, we'll do all the fixer, all the engineered turrets now. We'll go back to the Magus and do that. That was my bad there. Sorry. No, perfect. So, flame turret. Let's see. 8 seconds cooldown on the first one. So it's 8 seconds here. And the other one is 5 seconds as well. 5 seconds. Bombardment. I'll just do them quickly. So we go back. You on the Magus? Alright, hold on a second. Let me do bombardment. 8 seconds on the first kill. And second one is 4 seconds. And the last one is the gun turret. Machine gun is 8 seconds. Hold on a second to see it. Machine gun is 8 seconds. And penetrating round is 10 seconds. Do you have the numbers for the flamer, Dutch? I'm gonna log out anyways, but if Dutch can give me the numbers quickly, we'll get this done, so we'll make sure everything is okay. How you doing, Frankie? How's things over the ocean, man? Oh, I'm also logging out. Let's see, let's do this right, because that's a good point Thane has there about the times. It's a good thing you spotted it. Let's try and sort this one out quickly. No, I want the cooldowns. I want the cooldowns. Flame of Chains is 8 seconds. The other one, Flame of Chains, 6 seconds. Yeah, that's what I want, just the cooldowns. So that one is 8 seconds, and the other one is 4 seconds. Sorry, 6 seconds. My bad. 6 seconds. And the pink horror has 10 seconds and 5 seconds. Seconds, 5 seconds. Yeah, we got him. Okay, let's let me log out because it's gonna be a problem with the game in the background. So we got the time, the cooldown. So on the first one, which is the flame turret versus the blue horror, just to carry on here. They have the same cooldowns. Gigi, no, I did not play, no. So they have the same cooldown. So here, the first one, which is the vent, the AoE, I think the Magus wins on the damage, same cooldown. On the flamethrower, the engineer does more damage, the same cooldown. But the difference is this is physical damage. 5. Come on. It's physical damage. It's more, but it's physical damage. The other stuff is the same. AoE, 40 feet, spirit. I put it as yellow because I'm not sure how much damage is going to be mitigated being a physical attack. The tooltip does not indicate corporeal, and if it doesn't, I count it as physical. That's what I've been told. If it doesn't say, it's physical. So oh, I don't have it on this version. I have it on a different copy, Dutch. I can't do that right now. So if it is corporeal, then the engineer will get a mark on that one. But if it's physical, as the tooltip says at the moment, unless somebody checks, I give the point over to the Magus because it's spirit over physical. And I think the physical will be mitigated quite a bit. Now moving down to the bombardment one versus the flamer. On the explosive grenade, which is 20 feet from the target, corporeal damage, 20 feet spirit damage on the Magus. Engineer deals 173 damage, Magus deals 232. So, on 8 seconds cooldown on each one of them, so I think that here the Magus wins on the damage. Then is the shock grenade versus the flame or Chinth. I can never say that name correctly. Now I gave the point here in advance to the engineer. 206 single target corporeal, 168 single target spirit. It does more damage, it has a lower cooldown, so yeah, engineer wins on the single target here but loses on the AoE. Overall they may come out to the same, you know, it's not a big thing. The main complaint a lot of people have between engineer and Magus on the pets is the gun turret versus the pink horror. The other two, a lot of people don't even use them. Close range, you'll rarely see somebody else doing it. All the other buffs are the same. And here is where it gets confusing and interesting. A lot of people complain about the amount of damage the machine gun skill of the gun turret outputs. Right? They've been dying to this for a very long time. And let's see what we have here. So machine gun will deal 196 damage a second. If you read the tooltip, it says 98 every 0.5 seconds, so that's 196 a second. So it's very bursty, so it's 196 a second for 3 seconds. That makes a total of 588 damage. Remember that is without gear, so it's not buffed up, because we're not looking at the total output, we're looking at which one's better than the other. 8 seconds cooldown. The equivalent on Destro, right, is a 5% critical reduction and 196 elemental dot that lasts for 10 seconds. It has also a 10-second cooldown. A-Clod. We're looking at a comparison between Engineer and Magus. We're down to the pets now. So a lot of people, I don't know which one is better. That's why I have it as a yellow. And this is what I would like your opinion. The Engineer deals 196 damage every second for 3 seconds. With the machine gun skill, 500 damage. On the other side, the Magus does a dot, 196 damage total over 10 seconds, but it takes away 5% of your critical chance. I really don't know which one is better. I mean, if you reduce the enemy's critical chance, then you will get less criticals, therefore less damage. And also the machine gun damage is also physical. It doesn't hurt any tanks or anything that has a lot of armor. A lot of armor is 3,500 plus. So I didn't give a point to it to none of this. It definitely would make the engineer burstier, but I don't think it's better or worse than reducing the critical chance of your enemy. It should be doing corporeal damage. That's what it says anyways. Then the next ability of the long range turrets. Yeah, you can post a link. Yes, we can check it. Is penetrating round. That is the debuff. So that one will remove, does 1 shot and 172 damage, physical damage, and if it's applied, it removes 612 armor debuff. It goes higher as you level up on the tree, by the way, all the way up to 900 if I'm not mistaken. And the Magus equivalent does elemental debuff, which is the main damage of the sniper tree for the Magus, and it deals more damage. It's still 1 shot. So I gave the point to the Magus. They debuff, armor for one side, elemental for the other. It does more damage, 216 on the tooltip over 172. I'm assuming that the amount of elemental debuff is equivalent to the 612 of armor. I don't know how to check that, but so I feel that the pets overall, because they do elemental spirit, elemental on the damage, they are a little bit better than physical on the gun, on the turrets of the engineer. They also deal more damage overall per shot, and the only difference would be this one. That would be the only advantage of the engineer. The fact that the machine gun on the sniper tree, it's more bursty and deals more damage than that. And again, I will point out that I'm not certain whether 5% critical reduction on your enemy is better or worse than dealing more damage, because this also mitigates damage. You cut damage off your enemy shooting you. I'm just going to take a second to click this from... we'll look on this. I open it up. We'll look at this after we finish the comparison here. So, just quickly before we go to the last one, which is the conclusion of all this, summed up, and then you can tell me what you think about it. So the Magus gets a little bit more parry and disrupt. The stats are the same, damage output are the same. Naked, unarmed combat, the Engineer wins a little bit because somehow got some more crits. Versus the weapons, the Engineer loses on the melee fight. The Magus loses the range because he doesn't have a ranged attack. So that works. When we're using Gun Blast over fire, red fire, the Engineer on the dummy versus the Magus comes out a little bit the same. On the contract, things change roughly. The Magus comes on top with more damage when it comes to the contract over the dummies. On the Grenadier build, Fire Grenade versus Red Wind. Red Wind wins hands down, higher DPS, higher total damage, but less big damage because it does 3 attacks in a row, small ones, so that wouldn't be up, but the burst is almost double, if not more, from the Engineer. On the skills, the Magus gets cheaper skills than the Engineer. They can cast an extra dot in the 250 AP they have over the Engineer. They can cast 6. The pets, like I said, I feel the Magus pets are better, with the exception of machine gun, the sniper turret that gives burst, but like again, don't know if the anti-crit is better. And overall, as you can see with the colors here, I'll make this bigger if you want a little bit. I think the Magus has a lot more pluses overall than the Engineer has. Melee attack on the Engineer is much lower. Of course, the Magus has a much more. It's a 200 at close range. The Engineer has the long range auto attack, and he can use both weapons. That's a major plus for him. The stats are almost the same between the 200 and the 2 weapons, if you're thinking, but it's a big minus that the Magus doesn't have a ranged attack, being a ranged class, but he is stronger close. This is something that he will work a lot better on the higher level engines versus Maguses. This is something, I don't know if it happened by mistake or they know about it, but the Engineer gets 2 procs over 1. The Magus does. Because there's 1 proc on the melee weapon and there's 1 proc on the rifle. When the Engineer attacks with any attack, whether he's using, let's say, Gun Blast at 100 feet or Spanner at 5 feet, if the weapons proc, he gets 2 procs at the same time regardless of range. They activate on attack. The system does not check if you're using a melee to proc or a range to proc. One shot of the Engineer can proc 2 procs from the weapons, both of them at the same time. The Magus doesn't have that because he only gets 1 proc with the 200. That is a big plus on the Engineer side. Then it goes a little bit red because the Engineer loses a lot of his damage from the dummy to the construct, almost 500% because of the physical damage. On the grenades, it's more or less the same. He does get lower DPS on pretty much everything, the Engineer. I didn't use the pets, I am specific. But he does do more damage. They scale the same. According to my knowledge, they scale the same. I will tell you where the difference comes in, but I didn't have time to go all the way there. The difference comes in when the tactics come in. I will explain a little bit in a second. The Magus does more damage, but he's less bursty, that is for sure. But with the dots, him applying 1 more, that can be inverted. These 2 classes are really hard to compare because they have different mechanisms, like more dots and all that. The Engineer also has physical dots. As far as I know, they have to deal with the armor instead of resists. So on the sniper tree, even if you're playing a Grenadier, you're still going to use those dots as well, because, you know, they're there, you can use them, but they deal reduced damage by much. The fact that the Magus can cast 7 over 6 spells on the Engineer before they run out of AP is a great advantage for the Magus. You can dot more and run, get more kills. It's a plus that he has cheaper skills on both trees, at least one of them, 25 over 40 and 35 over 40. The one extra dot, I mean, who doesn't want more dots, right? The more you have, the more you kill. As far as the morale, because I checked that a little bit, we always say that Dastro build morale faster, maybe from pumping mechanisms, but on default, auto attack naked, they both build the first morale at 10 auto attacks on the dummy. So unless somebody's using, you know, some sort of a buff mechanism from the Archmage or other classes, on default, they build morale on the same rate. I've also had a little look, maybe some of my numbers a bit off, but they're pretty much close. The heal of the Magus on the last tree, for example, is much better. The heal, when used, the engineer heal used on a single target like themselves, it's 2 seconds cast time, it is castable, it's interruptible. If you take damage, you have pushback, and it has limited range, meaning it's only for 30 feet around you. It also ticks every 2 seconds, and it will do a total damage of 1,400. The Magus one, it instantly heals. It does 2,200 approximately. I don't remember exactly right now when I was writing it. It's uninterruptible because it's instant, there's no pushback, and also you gain 20 seconds of 25% chance to reflect damage backwards. So it has an added bonus there. It's not AoE though. But then again, the 30 feet in a mobile fight or a warband and only healing your party, you don't get the full benefit of the heal. So, because a lot of people play solo, as you know, I feel that the Magus heal is much better. Also, the healing of the engineer can be deadly because it's affected by healing debuff. And if you heal yourself with a kid while having the healing debuff of a shaman, you take damage. You heal every 2 seconds for 290, and the damage you receive because you get healed from the shaman debuff is 550. So instead of healing yourself with a keg, you're actually losing 250 every time it ticks if you have the debuff from the shaman. It is deadly. The Magus heal is not affected by debuffs because it doesn't heal you, it increases your wounds. It's a statistical buff, and therefore not affected by heal, debuffs, or damages, or anything like that. It's very powerful for the Magus to survive. It gives a breathing room to his healer. Pop that, pop a potion, 4,500 HP up, boom, instantly. You know, it's pretty good. The engineer has higher defenses versus the melee, and it's red because the Magus can get all the way up. It can get this all the way up to 800 plus toughness. So the Magus will get reduction from physical damage and spell damage. Plus, if you go super tanky and you put something like the Wings of Impervious set, you're also gonna have resist and toughness against everything. I personally feel it's a lot better. That's why I put it on the green side. The engineer by default has a lot, I mean like 100% easier builds than the Magus. Seriously, easier builds than the Magus. Like, if you're gonna do a tanky build on the engineer, you just get oppressor set, the easy one from the scenarios, you're done. Put some armor, tallies, use your armor skill, you know, tactic, and you're done. The Magus, on the other hand, you need oppressor, you need invader, you need beast lord, you need weapons from the dungeons. It's more grindy, but toughness, in my opinion, always been much better than armor because it covers more situations, you know what I mean? And as we've seen on the pets earlier, it's my opinion that the pets of the Magus are better than that, with the exception maybe of the gun turret, but don't forget it was nerfed. The damage is a lot less than it was 3 months ago. So maybe adds a little bit on the DPS there, but the same debuffs and all that, and I feel that the Magus is a lot stronger overall when played properly, when you do the grind, and you use your potions, the AP potions, the overtime and all this, it can be powerful. These are my notes at the end. So there's 3 green on the engineer, there's 12 green on the Magus. My opinion, has been saying this on the stream, that I feel that all this make the Magus approximately 25% better overall than the engineer. And now this is my reasoning behind that. To answer some of the questions that you guys have, how does that deal with scaling on the skills? The skills scale the same on the points you put. So the damage will go up the same. If a dot is harder, it will go harder. It's yellow. It's there's only one yellow. This one is yellow here, the one in the middle. In my screen, the green. I don't know about you. How you doing? Let you die. So I was saying this on the stream. People were saying like, why do you say this? This is why I was saying all that. Now it's here. You can review this. If I made a mistake, please let me know. We can correct this. We can do something about it. So they scale the same as you go up. The builds on the Magus, to go back for a second on that, they are harder because like the engineer gets on the last tree critical chance tactic that applies to everything. The Magus has per skill, per tree actually, and that is okay I think because the engineer has the physical, so he needs to counter that somewhere. Whether he counters it to the same level as the Magus, I don't know. Order wine and disinformation. Don't believe the damn dwarf lies. Thanks, Jason. Nice test. Yeah. But to answer to Lilari as well, that said the engineer always seemed to drop me very fast. The engineer, despite what we see here, all the red and the green and the differences, is not a weak class. But it's not as OP as Destro wants to make it happen, and it also shows that the Magus is not as weak as Destro say they are and don't like playing them. You know, the Magus is a respectable, powerful class, is stronger than the engineer. It has the elemental and spirit debuffs. It has a lot of damage to be done there. And yes, it is squishy as is that. It's the same scaling now. They get the same, the gear is the same. They get the same amounts. And I don't know if you've seen the initial one with the stats. They start with the same stats. 221 ballistics for the engine, 221 intelligence. Same anti-critical chance. They scale exactly the same, yes. They have no differences, and the sets give the same amounts and the same stuff and all that. The only difference, the Magus gear gives more toughness, and the engineer gives more armor. Generally speaking, Dastro toughness tank a lot more than Order, and Order armor tanks more than that. That is the big difference there. Yeah, yeah. It is Dutch. It is. As far as I know, it is. I mean, if I miss something, like I said again, if I miss something and you feel I've done something wrong, please let me know. I'm not perfect. I'm just trying to explain, you know, try and put some classes like that, and maybe we together, not just me, find, you know, if there's something wrong, we can fix it so people can calm down or the classes can be more balanced. That's the whole point here. I'm not saying the engineer is weak, buff him, or the Magus is OP, nerf him. I'm just saying this is what I see when I play those two classes, when I play them. These are the differences I see between them. Yeah, I am dwarf, yeah. So I'm gonna leave it here. You can review this. You said if this is gonna go on the forums. No, I'm not gonna put it on the forums. I don't deal with the forums or internal reckoning. But I will cut this part from the stream to go on YouTube. I will put this on a write-up on my website and on my Patreon site as well. When it's ready in the next couple of days, because I need to reformat this. It doesn't go on Patreon like this. I will tweet about it or put it on Discord. You will be able to see it and read it and review it. And if I've done something wrong, we can check it out. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'll try and do the other classes.